I've been a real bad boy on the town all night. Starting to calm down with the morning light. I'm in the dirt, down in the dirt. Been real bad. I've been a real bad boy on the town all night. Starting to calm down with the morning light. I'm in the dirt, down in the dirt. Down in the dirt. Down in the dirt. Down in the dirt.
Hi guys, welcome to Dual Realis. My name is David Swendseid and I have a topic of discussion that several people have asked me to do a while ago, and we're finally getting around to it, and I apologize. This bait has been out for quite a while now and has had star-studded entrance into tournament fishing. I want to talk about the G87, and actually we have two sizes in the G87, or two different models I should say. The body sizes are actually the same, exactly the same. The difference is in the lip, and you'll see here one, if I don't get unhooked here, it's gonna take a second. You'll see one that has a bigger lip than the other. This is the G87 20A, and this one right here is the G87 15A. Respectively speaking, the 15A will dive 15 feet and the 20A will dive 20 feet. Actually, both of them will dive further than that, but that's where we have the standard set. And we recommend somewhere between 12 and 14 pound tests for those depths. I want to talk about the body, the mechanics, and a little bit about the testing of the bait. And we're going to actually take this video and parlay some footage of how this bait works, because people have had questions about action and feel and depth and those type of things. So we're going to actually show that visually as well. Let me start by saying the lure is made out of a high quality ABS. We take these, and these actually get hand assembled. There is what we call a chemical welding process to eliminate water intrusion. The bait is constructed for durability and for what we call efficiency in water and air. So you're going to see this lure do some unique things when you cast it and when you retrieve it. The drag coefficient on this particular deep diving bait in comparison to others is dramatic. So we'll hopefully touch a little bit about that, and you'll actually see some of that hopefully on the video as well. Let me start by saying this bait's lip, if you notice, is unique in comparison to some deep diving lips. We took the track of taking a tall and narrow lip for our design. If you look closely, you'll see that the lip has an inversion on it. This is to help it grab water as well, and it also helps in deflection, which I'll talk about later. We wanted the bait to not only be able to reach its depth, which it does very, very well, but once it got there, we didn't want our action of our lure to be blunted or to end. In some aspects, some deep diving crankbaits will get deep, get nasty right away and do what they're supposed to do and get to that depth, but the action gets sacrificed because of the weight and also maybe the size of that bill to help that body get to the depth that's needed. In this bait, what we focused on was keeping the action. So that happens with this long bill, but it also happens in the cavity. Our bait is extremely buoyant, meaning that it will retract and it floats very rapidly. But it sheds water extremely fast and efficiently. So we would get to our depth just fine. Once we were there, we wanted the bait to still have a lively action. So I kind of nicknamed this, my bait, as the nimble deep diver, because once it hit its area, and I like to talk about counting rock and doing those type of things with crankbaits, but once it hit its destination, it wanted to retreat, but because it was so efficient of driving itself down, it'll stay there and it'll act very, very light on its feet. So as you're counting rock, it's counting rock, I mean, very, very small increments, where some baits will dig down, and as you incorporate the line and pull the bait along, the bait will jump heavily, or it'll dig and drag. This bait wants to do this, all down. And because of the narrow bill, when the bait rocks to the side, it and the inversion, it'll actually come down onto the surface and roll and then right itself again immediately. So it has all this really wicked, what we call wicked action down there, and very, very, again, very light on its feet. It's a trait in a crankbait which to me has been the first of its kind that I've experienced. I've been able to take that crankbait once I learn the depth that I want the crankbait to go, and I can make that crankbait dance down there, which is really, really cool. You won't feel a lot of feedback with this bait because of how quick it sheds water, but once it hits its bottom where it needs to go, you can practice this actually in shallow water, but you can take your rod handle or reel handle and jump the bait, and the bait will dance, and you can pull it along and the bait will fall and roll over and then right itself back up and start dancing again. So this action, I wanted to get into the bill piece of this because that leads us into the action part of the bait, and the action of this bait is extremely agile. I want to talk to you also about the wobble, and we call it kind of the X wobble. This bait is extremely balanced. When you pull it along, the faster you retrieve this bait, the tighter the wobble gets, but it stays balanced, where some baits will start to do certain things as soon as they get too much line tension, for example, too much force on the bill. This bait actually tightens up. It's extremely well balanced bait. So that helps when you're trying to retrieve the bait quickly, or you're going to use it maybe mechanically at a slower rate. The base of the lip, you'll see, has what we call a perforated base, which allows for stability. And that's a stabilization bar. Believe it or not, that's what that's designed for. You'll also note a protrusion out of cavity, out of body, that starts right here, and you'll see that little silver thing. Well, that's actually the weight, the ballast system. It's being protruded outside the body to help accelerate its diving. The efficiency of the diving, not dramatically for dive angle as much. This is a very aggressive diving bait though. But that weight being pushed forward is there for a reason. I want to talk a little bit about how that weight works and how that transfer system is involved. We use one of the most advanced transfer systems on the market. It has a wide channel, but the channel has very, very good ridges in there to keep the ballast where it needs to be at all times. We use a large ballast ball, and that ball is retained by a magnet in there. That's a high earth magnet. It's not magnetized metal, for example. There is some stabilization ballast in there as well. But once this ball is released, and that's simply done by the angler setting the ballast to the rear of the bait, and he can do that by moving his rod, for example. But once that ballast is released from the magnet, it will travel in track to the base, again offering us extremely high accurate trajectory. And not only high accurate, but creative as far as distance goes as well, and I'll talk a little bit about that. I want to touch on kind of a cool topic, and it's about basically how this lure performed. We took it through a battery of tests, not only depth and action and swim action. Those pieces were really important, how dynamic the bait was, how agile, how buoyant the bait was. But we also took the bait back on shore and used what we called a static platform and used some instruments to test the bait in its flight corridor, meaning casting the lure. And some people are going to find this almost unbelievable, but I assure you what we did was remarkable, and even eye-telling to some of us who tested the lure, you know, well after the fact. But we were able to exceed with the G87 20A, we were able to exceed 200 linear feet. That was using a 7.5 foot rod, medium action, with an older Shimano reel, and 12 to 14 pound diameter line, I would say. We were able to cast this thing great distances. Listen, if you're casting a deep diving crankbait 140 feet, you're doing a really good job. 150 feet, you're well within range. But imagine being able to exceed 200 feet. We hit 180, 175, 180, 185, 190 multiple times consistently. We hit 200 many times. I shared this with some of my professional friends, professional anglers, and they, you know, scratched their head kind of in bewilderment that that would even be possible. But I assure you, the goals that we achieved at 200 feet were almost the standard. We consistently hit 180, 190 feet, and then multiple times we hit 200 feet. And believe it or not, we exceeded that by allowing the bait to just kind of fly and sail. We also tested in crosswind. What we found out with this particular lure was we were extremely accurate, casting it where we wanted it to go when it was in windy conditions. So I touch on the testing piece on that because again, it really bends to what Dual Realis is all about. The R&D side of what we do is extensive, and we take it very seriously. A lot of folks now know that we have the largest lure manufacturing plant in Japan. We also have one of the largest testing facilities created as well. So this is going to continue to be part of what we do here at Dual Realis. Again, these are great deep diving crankbaits. The G87 15A with the smaller lip and the G87 20A with the longer lip. Again, the bodies are exactly the same. I will also say though the 15A has a bit more buoyancy. If I was to say what would be some of the characteristics that are different, the 15A acts a little bit more hyper, if I may, and has a little bit more buoyancy, and I think that definitely has to do with less lip and retaining the same body. Take time to get to know these baits as well as all of our product line at Dual Realis, but this is for the serious angler who really wants performance in his deep diving crankbait. The deep diving crankbait industry is well over 30 years old, has some really interesting developments that have come and gone from it. It is definitely a serious category to professional angling, and we take it serious as well here at Realis. I wish you guys luck, and stay tuned for a few more lure orientations that we'll take you through. Take care.